Hey guys, this is Bob Holly, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Interactive Wrestling Radio. Welcome everybody to a special edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com and YouTube. Today we're going to be joined by a former WWE superstar, controversial character to say the least, but a nice guy who did an incredible interview with us just yesterday, the one and only Hardcore Holly. We invite you to stay tuned after the interview for our wrestling wrap-up and to start tuning in every other Friday night here on WrestlingEpicenter.com as we're going to do the Interactive Interview, Interactive Wrestling Radio, every other Friday night right here only at WrestlingEpicenter.com.
Hey, this is the Macho Man, Randy Savage, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview. Oh, yeah.
And on the Newsmaker line with us right now is our guest of the week, and what an honor it is to have him on the line with us, the one and only Hardcore Holly. Bob Holly, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Hey, thank you guys for having me. I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate you taking the time to do this. We've been doing this over a decade, and I was thinking about it just before I called you, and you're the last member of the Holly family that we've had on. We had Mikey on before he passed away, Mad Mikey, Crash Holly, and we had Nora on a long time ago. So it took a long time. It took a long time to get all you guys, but I'm happy to have you on. And obviously, you have the most storied of the careers of all those guys. So it's great to have you finally join us.
Well, I sure do appreciate you guys having me on your show because, like I said, we talked earlier, and it's if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be able to have a platform to get my story out there. So, and I truly do thank you guys. I really do, and I'm just very grateful and very appreciative for it.
Very good. Well, we certainly are appreciative of your time as well. But you got a book out right now, and I got to tell you, we were looking at it right before we called you, and I love it. I got to be completely honest with you because you are as real can be. The name of this book, by the way, is called The Hardcore Truth, and it's not badly named. It's definitely, that's what it is. You tell the truth, even if it's not what some people probably want to hear. How has the reaction been so far to the book?
You know what? Actually, I've had so many great reviews, and I'm truly surprised because I thought for sure, and most of the credit goes to Ross Williams, the guy who wrote the book, and a little bit about him. You see, he wrestles himself also, so it was easy for him to put my words on paper, because like most wrestling books, you have writers that aren't wrestling fans. They're just, writers basically. And with Ross Williams having a background in wrestling and knowing the business like he does, it made it much easier for him. And the way he wrote the book also is as if I was sitting there talking to you guys, and he did everything in my exact words. He didn't alter anything, because he's English. He's from England. And so
okay.
He didn't alter anything, and he just, he told my story the way I told it to him. And so he did a great job. And Ross, he's actually wanting to be a writer for WWE or TNA. And the guy is super intelligent, and he comes up with some bizarre storylines where everything makes so much good sense. And that's what, they lack today a little, in some of the stories, and because he'll write stuff just off the cuff, and he'll call me and think about this, and he'll give me this long elaborate storyline, and it's like that sounds really cool, and they could use something like that there. But my hat's off to him because he's the one who basically he made the book what it is today. Really, he did. So I'm very, very fortunate to have somebody like him in my corner.
My wife has a bit of a potty mouth, and she's actually from England. There's a couple a couple times I said, you know what, this sounds like you talking. I actually looked and said that to her. So maybe that's why it translated in that way. I'm not sure, but that was excellent. So what made you decide to write the book? Because obviously you're a guy who was around the WWE for a lot longer than most guys have the opportunity to be there. So you have more stories than the majority of guys who are out there who could write a book, and you share a lot of those stories. But some of them are not going to be, things that necessarily the guys are going to be happy to read. What made you decide to sit down and finally put pen to paper with this?
Us just sitting around talking to my wife and just talking about, things in the past and stuff, being on the road and everything. And she's like, why don't you write a book? And I'm like, nobody's going to buy my book. Nobody's going to be interested in what I have to say. And she's like, you ought to really think about it. And the more we talked about it and stuff, I thought, you know what, let me call the people at ECW Press and see if they're interested in helping me out. And so I talked to a guy there, and he said the best thing for me to do is find somebody that could help me write it, because they didn't have anybody available.
Right.
And he said, especially somebody that lived close by. And I'm like, man, I don't know anybody. So that just kind of stopped right there for a little bit. And then I got to talking to my friend Ross, the guy that wrote the book, and, kicking around the idea of writing a book. And he's and I said, well, the only problem is we need a writer to help us out. And he said, why don't you give me a crack at it? And I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, why not? And so I called ECW Press back, and Michael Holmes said, have him send us, a sample of what he can write, and we'll go from there. So the forward in the book is the piece that he wrote and sent, and they were hooked. They's like, we want you guys to go forward with this project. So, they sent a contract and everything, and so that's how that came about. It took about 18 months to write this thing. We Skyped 3 or 4 days a week doing it.
It comes across, too, because it is a work that is, how can I put this? I've been trying to find a way to say it, but it's not just a wrestling book, but when it is a wrestling book, the details of it are so in tune. There's nothing I read in this and think, wow, that's, they got the wrong name. And that could probably have to do with, the fact that he's obviously a fan and knows wrestling. But it's just, It's so detailed and perfect, and, it really did come off excellent. And like I said, it does talk about your whole life, not just your wrestling career. And it sounds like you've had, you've been a tough guy your whole life. But talking to you, I got to be completely honest. Before we called you up, Patrick Kelly was afraid that we were going to have a little trouble because we thought you might be a little bit rough with us.
No. Oh, yeah, throw me under the bus, James.
Oh, no, I'm not like that at all. You know what? It's funny because, I've been vilified because of my character on TV, and people have this impression that I'm just this, I come off as this jerk. And people have to understand that, this is the character that I portray on TV. That's not me in real life. I wouldn't dare treat people like garbage or be rude to people or anything like that, Right. And I'm the kind of guy, too, when I'm in the ring, if I dish it out to somebody, I expect the same treatment back. And I've always lived by that rule, and because some people say that I've always taken liberties with people, and I really haven't, because that's just the way I wrestle.
Right.
And the people that I get in the ring with, they have the understanding that the way I wrestle them and, how physical I am with them, they're more than welcome to be physical back with me, and I don't have a problem with that, so... But yeah, and another reason I wanted to write the book, because I also wanted people to know how I really am when I'm not wrestling,
Right.
When I'm not that character, because so many people don't know me and they judge me just based off of television, and I get a lot of heat for that,
Yeah.
And so I just wanted people to understand, hey, this is that's not really me, what you see on TV. I'm a very, I care about people. I like being treated nice, and I'd like to treat people nice. I'm a giver by all means and not a taker. And, and I wanted people to understand that. And another thing, too, is, I didn't want the book to come across like I had an axe to grind. I wanted to be totally honest with people and give my opinions, opinions only, on the way I felt about certain things, and certain people, but also the people that I, don't speak too kindly of in the book, I also put them over too.
Exactly.
So it's
right.
like I'm throwing them under the bus completely and running them over and backing up and running them back over again.
Right.
And I point out the good points with these people too, but I go into a lot of detail because I want people to know how it really is back in the back, behind the scenes, because these other wrestling books, they don't do that, and I don't know why. They just kind of leave their out there, and I don't know if it's because they're afraid they're going to make somebody mad or they may never get hired again or what. Me, I don't care. I'm completely content in my life and happy with my life right now, and I live my life on my terms now and not WWE's terms. And I wanted people to understand that too.
Absolutely, and one of the guys that I thought you were going to throw under the bus at the beginning of the book, or the wrestling portion of the book anyway, was Shawn Michaels, and you are very clear about the way that life was as a WWE wrestler, WWF wrestler at the time, when the Kliq was running wild. And, we've heard a lot of stories. Your book really does kind of put it to bed and put the period at the end of the sentence. But you also go forward and say, that was then, and then Shawn Michaels now is a completely different person.
Yes, and he is. Let me I want people to understand too. I've always, despite me having a couple run-ins with Shawn here and there, I've always thought a lot of the guy because the guy is so talented, and to this day, I truly think he is the best in-ring performer that there ever is or ever was, and I have tons of respect for Shawn, tons and tons of respect for that man because of what he has done for the business and who he has become. Shawn is a great guy. He really is. Back in the day when, the Kliq was running the show, yeah, I didn't think too kindly of him, but I still had respect for him because of what he can do. But, he's to me, he's all-time hands down. He is a great person to this day. He really is.
Well, going back to your time backstage in the WWE, you were around during various periods throughout the entire run of the WWE. One thing that I find very interesting is for the guys that were around during that period in the mid-'90s when it was very cartoony and kid-friendly, and then that immediate transition into the Attitude Era. What was that shift in direction like backstage for the guys?
I think it was, it's hard to say because I just, I didn't really get in too much of the mix of the locker room politics and stuff. I kind of stayed to myself, I mean, I still, talk to guys and stuff like that, but I think it was like kind of a relief because people had more influence in their character once we started the Attitude Era. Because before you had to be this cartoon character that was kind of goofy and just, and guys weren't comfortable with, because, if you're not comfortable with the character like me, with my first character, Sparky Plug, I was not comfortable from the get-go being that person, because they wanted me to be this happy-go-lucky, everything is just dandy kind of guy, and life isn't like that, and it's just, and they wanted me to just be this free-spirited race car driver that's happy all the time, and just, and it just, I couldn't put 100% into that character. So as far as the way everything changed, I think guys were more relieved because they had more input, more influence on their character during the Attitude Era because it was a reflection of their personality, whatever their characters, whatever they ended up becoming.
Right.
So, and like with my hardcore gimmick, I was comfortable playing that because, in a sense, that was me to a sense, not to the fact that, I was miserable, I hated people, and I beat up people, not by that means at all. But as far as going out there and just being rough and rugged and, you know, being very aggressive, yeah, that was me. So it was easier to portray that character as with everybody else. So I think that's, to me, when that transition made from the cartoony to the Attitude Era, it was more of a relief to everybody because they were more comfortable and they had more input with their character, you know, sort of like that.
I would agree.
Right. It's actually, you know, on this show we talk all the time about the current state of the WWE, and every week James and I just talk to each other. We're like, you know, those baby faces are really happy. They're always smiling and always waving to the crowd and just so happy. So it's interesting to see how things have kind of, you know, gone back and forth on how Vince portrays his characters.
Yeah, and you know, like Kane, for example. You know, Glenn's a great guy. I really like Glenn a lot. You know, and I've rode up and down the road with him several times and stuff, and he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Mm-hmm. But when I see his character now, him just, you know, glad-handing people and just being, you know, celebrating and being all like, you know, rah, 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 let's go get him kind of guy, to me, it just, he's not that big red monster anymore to me, you know, and I think, you know, you know, that's just my opinion. You know, it might work for him, but just seeing what he was, and he was this killer, this monster, and then now he's, you know, cutting babyface promos and stuff like that. It just, to me, that just doesn't work. You know, I don't know. That's just my opinion, and so, you know, take it for whatever it's worth. But, you know, I do see your point, though. It's like, why is everything, you know? And I think it's because of the whole PG thing too.
Absolutely, I would say so, and. It was very cool back in the day. Every one of my favorite wrestlers had a day job. It was, you know, Duke the dumpster. He was the garbage guy, and you were the race car driver. Yeah. So everybody had to have a day job other than being a wrestler. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All righty. Well, early on in the book, your WWF career, you talked about a guy who was my first really big interview, and that's Macho Man Randy Savage. And you say that he was a big influence on you in the WWF. How did he influence your career?
He actually took me under his wing. Him and Rick Martel, they pretty much both took me under their wing. And for whatever reason, I don't know why. I mean, I guess they just, you know, liked me. And because when I first came in, you know, Paul Bearer's the one who got me started.
Right.
You know, and so when I first came in, of course, I came in with him. And you know, I met everybody, and I always came in and I said hi to everybody, and I always sat down and minded my business, you know, and I spoke when I was spoken to, you know, I didn't speak out of turn or nothing, and so I think that they just, you know, they took to me for whatever reason, and Randy and Rick, you know, they both just kind of taught me these are the do's and don'ts in the big league. This is, you know, so they you know, tutored me pretty much on you know, what you do, how to become successful, you know, and what not to do, you know, and you know, when to speak up and stand up for yourself if need be, you know. So, you know, and I was always in their head asking them questions, you know, which they didn't mind, of course, because that's how you learn.
Right.
And so, you know, they were just, you know, they were super kind to me, and Randy just, you know, he always looked after me and just, you know, is anything you need, anything I do for you, whatever. He was that type of guy, you know. So, you know, and that's how he influenced me a lot, you know. So.
Very cool. Yeah, he was one of my first big interviews, and he said, anytime you want me in the future, just give me a call. And you know what? I only called him up one other time because, to me, that's like wrestling royalty. You don't mess with them unless you have to. So.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You know, and he's a funny guy too. I mean, hanging around him and stuff, you know, in the back and everything. He's, you know, he's funny. You know, he made me laugh a lot too.
Very cool, very cool. You mentioned in the book, towards the end of the book, about having an unfavorable opinion of the internet because anybody can post anything and how it affects the guys. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I might have been your only supporter back at Tough Enough when what happened with Matt Capatelli happened. And, you know, I was one of the few guys out there who was writing editorials and doing this show, because I was doing it back then too, and saying, look, wrestling's not ballet. You know, if it's a show called Tough Enough, he wants to see how tough he is. You know, right. What is your opinion of how I want to say, you talked a little bit about your reputation. How influential was the Matt Capatelli incident in forming that reputation that the Internet and I guess everybody seems to have of you?
I just think it made people mad simply because of the way Capatelli carried on, going on national TV, crying, wanting to quit, talking about how it was BS that this happened and everything, But the thing is, he's got and it's obvious he had no clue about the wrestling business because, he wanted to quit over a black eye and a bloody lip. And a lot of times the reason I'm there is to test these guys and see what they're made of. And the guy truly had potential to be something in WWE, and, they're all laughing and joking and kidding around and having a good time in the ring and stuff. And I'm like, this isn't what wrestling is about, so when I went in there, I got physical with him, as I do with everybody else, and everybody else has the same liberty with me. I've never complained. But, for God's sakes, I gave the guy a black eye and a bloody lip, okay? And I can't tell you how many times I've had a black eye and a bloody lip, and I didn't cry the next day on TV that I wanted to quit, or, I broke my arm completely in two, and I kept wrestling. I did not quit. I cracked the vertebrae in my neck, and I kept wrestling, and I didn't quit. I sliced my back open, got 25 stitches. I kept wrestling, and I didn't quit. And here he gets a black eye and a bloody lip, and he cries on national TV that I was too rough with him, that he wanted to quit. And and so my point being is, he's the one who made me look like a villain, basically, because of the way he carried on TV. If he would have never said anything about it, it wouldn't have been an issue. Honestly, it really never would have.
Right.
But he's the one that started that forest fire. And so, but what people have to understand is, I didn't break his arm. I didn't poke his eye out. I didn't knock any teeth out. I didn't break his jaw. I got rough. So what's the problem? And I don't understand that. And all these people on the Internet, think I'm this bad, horrible guy because I gave somebody a black eye and a bloody lip. I can't tell you how many times Bradshaw has given me a black eye. I can't tell you how many times Jericho's kicked me in the mouth and cracked my tooth and gave me a bloody lip.
Right.
So
I got to think Van Damme probably did it to you too a couple times.
Oh my God, yes, exactly. So my point, that's exactly my point. So and here's this guy who has no clue about the wrestling business, and then he's going to go on TV and cry that he wants to quit. I think he made himself look bad in a lot of people's eyes because he went on TV and he was crying. I like Matt. Don't get me wrong. I liked him. We had a sit down and we talked it out and everything, and he understood, but he wasn't meant to be in the wrestling business. If he's the only person I know of that's ever cried on national TV because he got a black eye. I've never seen anything like that in my life, and I was totally blown away when I saw that. I really was. I was like, oh my God, you're kidding me. And it's funny because when I did that, when I went to LA to do that, I was supposed to have my surgery the next day on my neck. So I was in the ring with him against doctor's orders, against Vince McMahon's orders, that I was in the ring with Matt Capatelli and all those guys with a cracked vertebrae in my neck, and I could potentially have paralyzed myself. And here he's crying because he's got a black eye,
You know what?
Does that tell you?
And I almost fell off my chair reading the story, but you talked about, how tough Mae Young was, and you gave her a full-blown clothesline that flipped an 80-year-old woman in the air, and she walked back. Maybe if he was...
Yeah, and she, and here's an 80-year-old woman going through tables, Bubba Ray Dudley's putting her through tables, so, come on. I just think that was just too much. Matt, crying about, getting a black eye and stuff like that. I just say, all these people that sacrifice their bodies and get in the ring, and put their lives on the line, and wrestle through all these injuries, and then, Matt's wanting to quit because somebody got rough with him, So it's like, and to me, that was a slap in everybody's face that goes out there and puts on a show night after night, that wrestles.
Actually, I remember when the story first broke, and I was just blown away by the reaction to it, because one of the stories I always heard as a kid, even, when I was 5 or 6 years old, was how Hulk Hogan had his leg broken by Hiro Matsuda when he got in his first day of training, and I just assumed that, well, isn't that what they do there? They're just really rough with each other? Don't they have to test these guys' toughness to see if they belong here or not? So the whole reaction to the story, I was actually really blown away by.
Yeah, I was too. You know what? It was about 50-50 on the down the middle as far as people's point of, their opinions about it. And you're gonna have these people that just, despite what I do, they hate my guts no matter what. And that's fine. That's their decision. I don't care. I'm not gonna lose no sleep over it. And when people get on the internet and bash me, hey, at least they're thinking about me, so I won right there. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So at least, I'm on their mind enough for them to bash me, so, I must be doing something right. But anyway, yeah, it's when my very first match, I shouldn't say my very first match, but I'll never forget, I was in a tag match when I first broke into the business, and I had the crowd for 20 solid minutes. I mean, I was beaten to a pulp, and I didn't know any better, and I just thought this was part of it. I couldn't walk for a few days because that's how bad it was.
Wow.
And I never complained. I went back for more. That's because that's how bad I wanted it. And I was trained by some pretty rough people, so, and what I did to him was nothing that's been done to me or a lot of people, so, I mean, it blew me away that he's going to go on national TV and cry because he got a black eye and a bloody lip and that I was too rough with him,
right.
Like, he would have never made it back in when I was breaking into the business. He would have never made it. Well, he didn't make it, but, and that's because he had the health issue with the tumor, the brain tumor, whatever. But and I hate it for the guy, but from what I understand, he's doing fine now. He's okay, which I'm glad, but I just don't think he was cut out for the wrestling business. I really, really don't.
I mean, you and I have similar backgrounds in terms of, our love of classic Portland wrestling and classic Southern wrestling. I mean, I have literally disc upon disc upon disc of stuff that I, to this day, still pop in every time I get frustrated with what wrestling has become and need a reminder about why I still love this stuff. And, that generation of toughness just didn't seem to continue in the modern wrestling world.
No, it doesn't. And it's, and I think what it is now is because of a lot of liability issues and stuff like that, guys are pampered now. And so the day, like the Fit Finleys, the Eddie Guerreros, the Bradshaws, the Ron Simmons, the Mings, those guys are going by the wayside.
Thank you for including him, by the way. He's often forgotten, Ming.
Ming, yes. That's, to me, that is the baddest man on the planet, bar none. I don't care who you are. Ming is the baddest man going. It doesn't, and I don't care how old he is. He will still destroy somebody. But and I got along great with him too. I was rough with him. Of all people, I was even rough with him. Because I gave him the Alabama Slam one night, and I stuck him, and I gave it to him too, and guys like that appreciate it when you're rough with them. They know they know the deal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And but it's just, I think that guys are too pampered nowadays because you look at the old school guys that when there was territories.
Right,
I mean, there was some bad men back then. I mean, rough guys. Like Dick Slater, guys like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and So, I think it's due because there's no territories anymore, so there's nowhere anybody can learn unless you go to a school or a camp. And, with WWE, and, like I said, those guys are catered to and pampered, and back in the day, when I was with WWE, when I first went with them, we didn't have trainers. We didn't have people to tape us up. We wrestled in a ring that was hard as concrete because, we had guys like Yokozuna, Undertaker, and all the big guys, So, and now guys are just, taped up and taken care of. We have trainers and all this now, which is a good thing. I've always thought that was a good thing. They should, but
right.
Back in the day, we didn't know any better. We just, if something hurt, we just, taped up and we went about our business. We did everything ourselves, so, and I just think guys are catered to a lot nowadays. I really do.
Has the ring gotten softer over the years?
Well, there's a lot more give to it. When the transition to the ring, that was, I think, back in 96, 97 is when they started switching over to a ring with more give. Because when I first started WWE, I was like, oh my God, these rings, there was no give to them whatsoever. I mean, it was just like landing on a floor.
Wow.
And so, yeah, and we didn't have trainers back then. If we got hurt, we were on our own, and that's just the way it was. And but the rings have gotten, and it's funny because nobody really got hurt that bad when those rings were that hard. It's almost like guys were getting hurt more now that the rings are softer for whatever reason. I don't know. It's crazy, but of course back then too, when guys got hurt, you never knew it because they didn't say anything.
There you go.
They just ongoing, and it's like now a guy gets hurt and they'll just they'll milk it.
There you go.
Yeah. So.
Well, one of the other questions I wanted to ask you actually circulates around MMA, and it's kind of double-edged sword. Obviously, the guy who helped rupture one of your discs, even though you don't really blame him in the book, is Brock Lesnar. Obviously, he went on to great MMA fame and is back in wrestling. My question is, first of all, with your background, and for those who don't know, you were a bar fighter. You used to take money to have bar fights. With your background in that kind of thing, if you could go back, whatever it is, 25 years now, and say, okay, instead of wrestling, MMA is as popular as it is now, would you have chosen the MMA path, or would you still have gone with the professional wrestling path?
Oh, I'd have definitely went MMA. Definitely, we went with that. And yeah, because I've always been one of them kind of guys where, like, if because back in my day when I was fighting, that was a thrill to me. Whether I won or lost, it was just the thrill of can I beat this guy? So I actually got off on fighting people. I didn't go looking for it. Don't get me wrong, but if an opportunity came up to fight somebody, I would do it just for the thrill of it and just to see if I could beat the guy, and so, that I've always, and I've always, told myself, I've talked about it with people before, and I would have definitely went the MMA route, and like, and back when MMA first started, it was basically, bar fighters and just, people that want to fight.
Right.
But now it's evolved to where you have to have a well-rounded background, which, of course, I would have ended up getting a trainer and all that. I'd have went the whole 9 yards doing it the proper way. But, yeah, in answer to your question, I'd have definitely went MMA, because I'm the kind of guy, it's like, if you want to fight me or if something's coming up or we have an issue or something and somebody wants to fight, I will fight. I don't care if I win or lose. I enjoy it. And so, and that's why I've never been afraid of anybody, regardless if I get my ass handed to me or not. That's why I've never been afraid of anybody, because the way I've always looked at it, you can't hurt me no worse than I can hurt you, so.
Very good, yeah.
And that's the way I've always looked at it, and and I've always, and if I'm going to get beat up, you're going to be there a while. You might beat me up, but you're going to be there a while, so. And that's the attitude I've always had, and it's always worked. It's always worked fine for me, So, but Yeah, and I'm not the toughest guy on the planet by no means, but I won't back down from anybody. I don't care who it is, and but that's why I love the MMA now, because it's like people get in there. You don't know who's going to win. Anybody can win. That's the beauty of it.
Right.
So, I just love watching MMA. I do. I love it.
Well,
very cool.
Great that you mentioned that you love getting into fights and all that stuff, because you were part of the Brawl for All tournament, which was an experiment that the WWF tried way back in 1998. Was that something that you enjoyed doing, or what was the backstage reaction to that whole concept?
Oh, I enjoyed doing it. People thought that it was the wrong thing to do. The boys thought, pitting the boys against the boys, one another in a shoot is the wrong thing to do, which it was. But back then, the way money was back then and still is, if you're a opener or mid-card guy, they were offering good money, so why not do it? They were offering $5,000 a fight,
Wow.
so why not do it? And so when they picked the 16 guys to do it, I wasn't one of the guys, and Bradshaw is actually the one who got me in it. And but the way, and the guys, a lot of the guys got in it just simply for the money, because nobody was making any money, so it's like $5,000, win, lose, or draw, you get $5,000, so why not? But
and you have a great story on it in the book. You talk about overhearing what Doc said after.
Oh, that was unbelievable. Oh my God, I thought I was hearing things, and I was like,
that was a great story. For those who don't know, he says that he heard Doc say that he heard he got paid the money to win the thing after Bart Gunn had beaten him up.
Yep, because they were bringing him in from Japan to work with Steve Austin on top. And so instead of just bringing him in, because they knew it would have got a lot of heat, just bringing him in and throwing him in the mix with Steve Austin, this was an avenue for them to get Steve just to walk through everybody, and then boom, with Steve Austin. And like I said, if it's a shoot, like in a fight, you never know what's going to happen. You can't do something like that. And they thought they'd be able to, they thought Steve would just walk in and, clean house through however many guys he had to, and then boom, he's right there. But, Bart screwed up their whole storyline. And like Bart said, too, he's like, if they wanted me to lose to him, all they had to do was tell me, So that was a pretty interesting period in time right there. It was interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the thing is, Bart said he was going to knock him out, and he did.
He did.
Bart called Bruce Pritchard and said, I'm going to knock JR's boy out. And I'll be damned if he didn't do it, because we were riding together, and I was driving, and Mike was on the phone with the office, and he was telling them this, and they didn't believe him. They were like, oh, yeah, sure, okay, yeah, well, good for you, blah, blah, all this, and and next thing you know, Bart knocks out Steve, and JR was PO'd. I mean, that man was seeing red.
Oh, boy.
It was, And the thing is, too, no disrespect to Steve Williams, but when that happened, the boys in the back popped, Right. And it was because JR was, walking around the back telling everybody when they bring Steve in, he's going to walk through everybody, and JR is the one who planted that seed and was kind of making everybody mad. And so, and then he got in there with somebody that, one of the hardest punchers on the damn planet, and ended up knocking him out. And that, that kind of, and of course, Mike got a lot of heat for that. Bart got a lot of heat for that too now.
Right,
So, and that's how he ended up getting set up for WrestleMania. They conned him into that deal there. They brainwashed him into that, because that should have never happened with Butterbean. Should have never happened.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. I agree. I'm going to spare you out of respect to Chris Benoit and out of respect to you. I'm not going to talk about that on this. I am going to, however, ask you, as a WWE wrestler at the time, was it aggravating to you to see the news reporters, the people we depend on to get the story, the real story and the true story in everyday life, not just wrestling or sports or anything, talking about a subject they clearly knew nothing about and made no attempt to actually understand it?
Was that, yeah, you're asking me if that was aggravating?
Was that aggravating to you as a WWE wrestler at the time?
You know what, it was, and it is to everybody, but you can't let that bother you because people are going to write stories to get people hooked. You know, they're going to fabricate stuff. They're going to talk about stuff they know nothing about to sell magazines, to sell newspapers, you know, to sell their radio and stuff like that. So, you know, it is aggravating, but what can you do about it? There's really not, at the end of the day, you can't do anything about it, so you just can't worry about it, you know, because, you know, so many things are written about so many people that are so untrue, you know, but that's just, I think that's just people trying to get other people to read what they have to say and, you know, and to just, you know, get them interested in what, you know, what they have to say about individual or whatever it may be, you know, topic conversation. So, you know, just at the end of the day, you can't really let that bother you because then, you know, because it would drive you crazy. It really would. And
it has. And, yeah, on this show, I will share this much with you. Bill O'Reilly, who I tend to agree with more than disagree with, was talking about with passion and validity that Chris Benoit was a known psychopath because he had broken Sabu's neck in the ring previously. It's like, wow, that is completely uneducated. That was stunning to me.
Right.
But
yeah,
what can you do?
Well, you know, never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Right, and you know, it could be the same thing said with Brock, you know, about Brock breaking my neck, but he didn't do it. You know, that's the thing. He didn't do it. It was both of us. You know, so that just shows you how uneducated Bill O'Reilly is talking about Benoit breaking Sabu's neck because, you know, that's clearly an accident or, you know, because it's a move gone wrong. You know, nothing's intentional, you know, so, and it could easily be said about me and Brock when Brock broke my neck, you know, and there has been people that said Brock did it on purpose, and it's like, how do you freaking know Brock did it on purpose? Were you talking to him? Were you in the ring with him? Were you in the back with him? No, you weren't, so you don't know. You know, and then it's like Bill O'Reilly. He doesn't know. He's just like the people that want to give their 2 cents worth and think they were there when it happened, and they clearly don't know anything about what goes on.
Absolutely. Well, taking a quick step back, back to the book. Your WWE career doesn't show many pictures from the WWE, and I would assume that's because you're as honest as you are in the book. Did you reach out to them at all to see if they would give you any content that you could use, you know, picture-wise or graphic-wise for your book?
No, I didn't because I did. The reason I didn't is because I knew that they would want control of my book. You know, they would want to see what was written in my book, and you know, and they would want, you know, because it's like the other wrestling books. They had total control of every other wrestling book that's been written of the, you know, WWE superstars that were in, you know, WWE. So, and I didn't want any, you know, WWE had control of me for long enough, and I didn't want them to have any control whatsoever, you know, because, you know, it gets, honestly, it's when I retired from them, it was a relief because it was like, okay, now I'm in control of me now, you know, no, you know, life is on my terms now. It's not, they're not going to dictate me anymore. So, you know, and then that's why I didn't reach out to them, you know, because I wanted this project to be 100% me and my writer, Ross Williams. So, yeah, but no, I didn't reach out to them at all.
Very cool, very cool. Well, the book is out now, and it's on ECW Press, and those folks have been good to me for many, many years. So I'm really glad to see that it came out with them. And I guess my question for you, kind of in the lead up to the end here, is you did a TV taping, a pay-per-view taping for Impact Wrestling, for TNA, at their Hardcore Justice 2 pay-per-view, which is one of their one-night-only shows. What was it like going and working for a different company, arguably competition, since since being so related to the WWE, and do you see yourself ever going back there and working again?
I'll tell you what, when I went down there, believe it or not, I was a nervous wreck.
Really?
Because here I'm going into a completely, new area for me. Whole new platform. Everything is completely different. The only thing that's the constant is the boys, and I knew most of them. So and there's some that I didn't know that I met that were pretty damn nice. Everybody, bottom line is everybody was so nice to me, and they made me feel like I was part of TNA. They really did. I did not feel like an outsider at all. And it was refreshing because, the writers, the office people, everybody came up to me and introduced themselves. And of course I went up to everybody too and introduced myself, but it was great to see, familiar faces and stuff like that. And it was one of the, honestly, it was one of the best times I've ever had in wrestling, that I enjoyed, because it was different. Everybody was so relaxed, and and I asked the guys, I was like, everybody just seems so happy here and so content. And he said, and one of the guys said that it's just because nobody's trying to, stab each other in the back. Everybody, they let them be themselves. They let them, they kind of turn everybody loose, and they let them have, do their thing.
Right.
They don't. It's hard to say. It was a very enjoyable experience, and yes, I would definitely go back. That's one thing I would not hesitate if they called me and want me to come back and do more stuff. I would go right now because that's how much I enjoyed everybody.
Really?
And it seemed like, as far as the work environment, everybody was just happy, relaxed. They weren't job scared. They could be themselves, and it showed. It really did. And just going over the match with, James Storm and Magnus, because we did a 6-man tag against Aces and Eights, and just everybody was just so like, whatever you want to do, let's just do it. And it was refreshing. It really was. I would go back in a New York minute. I really would.
Would you say that's the way it should be?
That's exactly the way it should be.
Wow. Cool.
And because let me explain something. It's like, with WWE, it's a great company. Don't get me wrong. It's a great company. Vince is a mastermind. He knows what's going on with everybody. But guys have a tendency to feel like they're on audition every single night, no matter how long they've been there. You can have 50 great matches. You can have one bad match, and then they start rethinking your whole career.
Unless you're Triple H. No, I'm just joking.
Unless you're one of the top guys and you're locked in and you're one of their big money makers. No,
I'm sorry, I should have prefaced that. We have a running gag that occasionally Triple H has the worst match of certain wrestlers' careers, like, for example, Scott Steiner and them, and they always blame, they always say it's the other guy's fault. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. What's the common denominator here? Hold on a sec.
Yeah, exactly, so, but yeah, and guys don't feel like they're on audition every night, and that's like, and with WWE, everybody is under the gun to perform at such a level that it's hard to sustain night after night.
Right.
Unless you're John Cena or The Rock or Undertaker and Triple H and the top guys that they don't have nothing to worry about. But it's like the mid card guys on down. You have to go out there and you cannot have a bad night. And if you do, it's like they just start rethinking your whole career, and it's like, do we move forward with this guy, or what do we do? That's how they make you feel, and it shouldn't be like that.
No, absolutely not.
you're not going to have a good match every single night, So it's TNA is just like everybody seems like they're having a great time. Nobody was stressed out. That's the kicker. Nobody was stressed out, and it was just refreshing to see.
You still sound surprised about that.
Yeah.
Well, I only have one more question for you, and basically it relates to the book, and it goes back to your misconceptions. And I got to tell you, I expected to get along with you well because I am a straightforward person. I don't blow smoke. Everything I've told you, you can check my history. I did defend you back at the Tough Enough stuff. I did do these things. That's legit. What do you think?
We talked about it on this show.
We did, absolutely, yeah. What is your opinion of why people should read the book, and do you think that they'll come away with it with a little bit of a different perspective on who Bob Holly, Hardcore Holly, is?
You know what, and I think they will, and that's what I wanted to achieve by writing this book. For the people that that misunderstand me and don't get me, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to write the book too, is so that way they can get to know the real me. I'm not this this hateful guy that miserable guy that I've portrayed to be, and I don't know where that came from, but I want and plus I want them to get the backstory of what I went through to get where I wanted to get, and my goals and stuff to maybe help somebody, inspire somebody to maybe, if they're having trouble achieving their goals, to not give up, just keep going, push forward and take different avenues to get where you need to get, different hurdles and stuff that you've got to go through. And I wanted people to see that, and then I wanted people to understand what goes on backstage, a little bit of the politics that's played, so they get a better understanding of why certain guys don't make it to the top level or get to be main event status, no matter how good they are, and I wanted people to see that because no books have ever talked about that.
No, and you're completely honest and to the point where I could see why you didn't want WWE to be involved, because obviously some of the things you do say they wouldn't want said.
Right, exactly. And that's the way I've always been. Like with me, there's no gray area. If I'm your friend for life. You'll always know where I stand. You may not like what I have to say. I may not say what you want me to hear. I may not say the things that you want me to say, as a friend, but at least you know where you stand with me. And I've always just been the kind of guy where I'm upfront with people. This is me. This is what you get. I'm loyal. I stand up for people too. Believe it or not, I stand up for a lot of people. I've always, I feel bad for a lot of people because they don't stand up for themselves, and it makes me want to stand up for them too. And and I want people, like I said, I want them to understand the reason why I'm like I am, and so and hopefully they'd have a different outlook on me after they read the book. And like this one guy wrote on Twitter, he said that at first he didn't like me, and then after reading the book, he became to like me because he got to know how I really was. So
I got to be honest. My wife was on the fence about you because you do come off as such a hard-nosed character. And, she was reading the book one night, and she was giggling her head off at some of the stories you were telling. I'm like, see? Doesn't seem like that bad of a guy.
And right. And see, that's the thing is, like, TV portrays you only in one dimension, And it's like, because, and the thing is, too, is like, people have to understand the character that I'm told to be. I'm told to go out there and not smile. I'm told to go be serious, be straightforward, kick people's asses, bottom line, that's it, And so that's, and I get why people don't like me too. I really do, because I'll watch TV and I'll see somebody on TV and I don't like them, but then I think, well, they're playing a character, so I can't say I don't like them because I don't know them. So I get how people feel that way, and, so, yeah, but I'm a softie too, trust me. I mean, the story of my book with my wife and everything, you can tell I'm a huge huge softy too. I really am.
I will go on record in saying this, and no disrespect. Last week we had Jimmy Corderas on, who also just released a book, 3CW Press, and I said his book was good, but honestly, I'm going to go on record. This book is so brutally honest and so truthful and so from the heart and so genuine that I think you can argue it's probably the best wrestling book that's been written since Mick Foley's.
Well, I sure appreciate that. That makes me feel very good, and I truly, truly appreciate it. And you know, like I said, you guys give me a platform to get my story out there, and if it wasn't for you, you know, I don't want you guys thanking me. I'm thanking you guys. You know, don't thank me for being on your show, because this, to me, it's a privilege for me to be on your show because I can get my story out there and get people to read it and stuff like that. So, and I thank you, and I'm so glad that you know, feel the way you do, you know, and it's that makes me feel good, and I really appreciate it. I really, really do.
Excellent, excellent. Patrick, did you want to ask any other questions before I wrap it up?
No more questions. I just think, you know, once again, I really enjoyed this time with you. Like James said, I wasn't sure what to expect when you got on the phone with us, but I had a lot of fun tonight. I'm glad you could come on the show and have some fun with us, too.
Yeah, Patrick, a lot of people don't know. At first, they don't know what they're going to get when they have me. So, but I'm just, you know, honestly, I'm just like everybody else. You know, if people show me respect, I show them respect, and you know, and I don't treat people bad. I really don't, and I'd never do that to anybody. You know, so and I thank you. I really do. I just thank you guys a ton. I'm very grateful. Trust me.
I appreciate it, too. Thank you for spending this much time with us. It certainly was no 15 minutes, like I said, but I appreciate you spending as much time as you have. And stay tuned for more right here on Interactive Wrestling Radio.
This is Mad Mikey, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview. I'm not mad, because I'm interactive.
This is a Superfly Jimmy Snuka. Thank you for having me on your radio dial.
And we are back here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. It is James Walsh, joined as always by Patrick Kelly.
Hello, everybody.
And Mr. Nick Knoll is again MIA this week, not Misfits in action, but missing in action. He will be back with us shortly. Misfits in action! I love that.
G.I. Bro is in the Hall of Fame.
G.I. Bro is in the Hall of Fame, right, yeah.
General Erection. He needs to go in next. What were their names? It was Lieutenant Loco, General Erection, G.I. Bro, Major Guns. Who else was in the group?
Lash LaRue was in there, but I don't remember what his gimmick name was.
Okay. You need proof that Vince Russo loves puns. General Erection.
General Erection, yep. Then there was Sergeant AWOL, which was the Wall. And the final one, which didn't last long, but it lasted longer than G.I. Bro, which only lasted, if I recall, like 2 weeks, was Private Stash.
Yep. And that might have been Lash LaRue.
No, that was Van Hammer.
That was Van Hammer, okay.
I don't remember what Lash's name was. I believe
they had
it was
so many gimmicks. They had so many stables back then in 2000 WCW. They had the Young Dragons, 3 Count, the Misfits in Action, the Filthy Animals were around, and of course there was the Millionaires Club and the New Blood and all that other stuff. So they had a lot of stables running around.
Well, it was all an attempt to recreate the NWO, but realistically, 2 of those that you mentioned were just tag teams, like Evan Courageous and 3 Count. That was just a tag team that just happened to have 3 guys. Same with the Young Dragons. They had some great matches, but I think that they lost their luster. And this is not me sounding like a pervert, but this is me being legitimate. They lost their luster when they got rid of Leia Meow.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who don't know, Leia Meow was Kimona Wana Leia. So say that slowly, everybody, and you want to know puns. There's a pun right there. Kimona Wana
Well, I'm even
Leia.
really stretching with that one.
That was Raven, I believe, who named her.
That was one of Raven's, okay.
Well, Raven is the one who brought her in. Apparently, he was the DJ at a strip club when she was dancing, and that's how she got into wrestling. But
why am I not shocked? I'm more shocked by Raven as a DJ. There's a hilarious visual for you.
Well, you got again. Raven has taken a new meaning. I mean, his look is kind of more rave than dark Raven Edgar Allan Poe. But you got to remember, he was like a rocker dude before he did this whole thing. So right. I could see it, and I could see that definitely, especially before Raven took off. In between his Johnny Polo days and that, I could see him doing that for some extra cash.
I'm amazed that Johnny Polo didn't take off.
Really? Are you being sarcastic or are you being serious?
Very sarcastic.
Okay. So you didn't like the young rave version of Jim Cornette?
No, not really.
For crying out loud, I think he actually carried a tennis racket at one point.
He had some, I think he had like a croquet stick or something, didn't he?
His name is Johnny Polo. What do they use in polo? That's a legitimate question.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea.
I've never watched it, so I don't know. I mean, I don't even really know what it is, so couldn't say, but maybe it had something to do with the sport of polo. Who knows?
Water polo, perhaps?
Yeah, which is essentially like
there's a track to get off
hockey. Of? Which what?
There's a track to get off of?
No, there was no track to get off of. You know what I found very weird? This is what I find very weird. Water polo, which essentially looks like people in shower caps trying not to drown while playing some weird hybrid version of water soccer hockey, is still an Olympic sport, but wrestling isn't.
That is really stupid. And you know what? I like water polo. I really do. Because that, I can't imagine playing goalie in water polo. That must be hard as hell. Try standing in a swimming pool and jumping from side to side in front of a confined area. It's not, playing goalie in that sport must be a bitch and a half. But, I mean, it's ridiculous. The things that are still Olympic sports and wrestling isn't. Power walking is still an Olympic sport.
Walking!
The sport. And I'll say it here, if I can do it with relative ease, then it's not a sport. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's just not. Or at least it's not worthy enough to be considered, the height of athletic competition, which is the Olympics.
If you strip it down, Greco-Roman wrestling is ingrained and entwined with the Olympics, so for it not to be part of it is just, in my opinion...
That's the sport I identify the Olympics through.
Exactly.
I mean, when I think Olympics, the first thing that pops into my mind is wrestling.
Exactly. I do agree. Anyway, we just finished up with Bob Holly, and, I said during the interview, it was either during the interview or right at the end of it after we stopped recording, but I do mean it. I have not legitimately sat down and enjoyed reading a wrestling book this much since Mick Foley's first book.
Mm-hmm.
It is just a great read. You got to get a hold of it, dude. If I can get you a copy, I need you to get a copy of this because this is really just an entertaining read. What people need to understand about the book, and we didn't talk about this during the interview, though we talked about seemingly everything else you could imagine, is the book is about his career and about his life, and it is Bob Holly's book. But I was amazed at the intricacies that go into this. He talks about everything logically that went on. The screw job in Montreal, obviously, but even going back to WrestleMania 10 and how Razor and Michaels took too much time and how Shawn Michaels Randy Savage kicked Shawn Michaels' ass that night because they took too much time, and he felt Michaels did it intentionally.
But they got the 10-man tags canceled, right?
They got the 10-man tag canceled. That's right, yeah. And how
which is becoming a WrestleMania tradition now.
Yeah, there you go.
The filler match that gets either bumped to the next night on Raw or bumped to the dark show or the dark match because they don't map out their time real well.
No, and it doesn't make sense because they got 4 hours, so theoretically they should be able to make it work. But you can understand it, though, because the main event's more important, so you want to make sure and give as much time as possible to it. You don't want those guys to cut it short so that the two black chicks can shake their asses the longer time. I mean, that let's be honest, even though this main event might not have been what we were, looking forward to take away from that for that would be stupid.
Oh, absolutely.
He also
talk about Bob Holly's book.
Yeah, I mean, the intricacies of it. He talks about how Shawn Michaels used to screw people, and he gets into such detail that he talks about how he screwed over Sid Vicious, because leading into SummerSlam 1995, yes, this is how detailed the book gets. He talks about this in the book. Leading into SummerSlam 1995, the plan was Michaels defending the Intercontinental title against Sid Vicious, and they were dicking around Sid Vicious left and right. And what ended up happening was they convinced Vince that Sid wasn't ready, and guess who Shawn got to wrestle? His buddy. Michaels had pissed everybody off in the company, so the only people he actually wanted to work against were the members of the Kliq, because he knew they would beat the piss out of him.
Right. Well, I mean, a lot of weird stuff was going on at the time. I remember the whole Dean Douglas incident and that whole bullshit.
They talked about that, too.
Now, my question is regarding, and I asked this question about the intergender tag that got dropped from WrestleMania this year, and I guess I'll ask it here in regards to the 10-man tag that got dropped from WrestleMania 10. Did the guys involved in that match get screwed out of a Mania payday?
I don't know. I mean, that wasn't discussed. I got to believe that out of guilt on Vince's part, and Vince being who Vince is, and for those who don't listen to the show, I differ with Vince on many, many things, but he does do the right thing most of the time in terms of taking care of people. I can't say he doesn't. Most of the time. So I got to believe he probably, out of guilt for not getting them on that card, he made sure that they still got the payday.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I believe that anyway. I mean, look at who got screwed in that match. It was the Smoking Guns and IRS, and I can't even remember who else was in the match. But
I'm going to try to remember everybody that was in that match. It was Jeff Jarrett, IRS, Rick Martel, and the Head Shrinkers versus the 1-2-3 Kid, Tatanka, Marty Jannetty, Bob Holly. Oh, I think maybe Marty wasn't in that match. The Smoking Guns were in there, and then it was I think it was 1-2-3 Kid. It was the Smoking Guns, 1-2-3 Kid, Bob Holly, and some other guy. I forget. Tatanka. That's who it was.
Yeah.
If I had to guess.
Yeah, they did the very bizarre segment where they had them arguing about who was going to be team captain or something, and that's how they wrote it off the show. And I was like, yeah, lame. Came off lame. What are you going to do, though?
Yeah.
Anyway, but no, I mean, I want people to understand that's how intricate the book gets. He talks about his own career to detail, but he also talks about when he makes his points about when other people were getting screwed over, or this person was doing this, that, and the other thing. He follows it up with examples and accurate dates and titles of events and things like that. It really is a well-thought-out, intelligent book, because a lot of times you read these books and guys will kind of say, and then when they were supposed to do that match, and you're not entirely sure when they're talking about. He flat out says SummerSlam 1995. I mean, there's no guesswork involved. It is spelled out, and it is accurate date-wise. So for those who might not know what to go, I mean, this should tell you everything about the book, by the way. Do you know what the final line of the book is?
What?
How do you like me now? So, I mean, it really is. It's a good book. And you know what? My wife was on the fence about him leading into that book. You know, she brought up things like, not just Matt Capatelli, but also, BB getting fired because she was sleeping with one of the guys, which is ironic because Trish Stratus got to push for it. But, it's kind of strange that that somebody who didn't actually really care for him leading into the book said, you know what, that was a really good book, and he actually comes off as a really nice, likable guy. And I think that that's probably really who he is. After speaking to him, I think he's more that character, which ironically is closer to his Thurman Sparky Plug gimmick than it is his Hardcore Holly gimmick.
Let's say Bodacious Bob, or was it Bombastic Bob or Bodacious Bob? I don't remember which.
I think they used both, but I think they settled on Bodacious.
Well, it was him and Bart Gunn were the team, and I don't remember if it was Bodacious. It's Bodacious Bart. Well, they used Bodacious and Bombastic, but I don't remember which was which.
The Midnight Express, the new Midnight Express.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, well, you know what? There was some, for everything that worked in the 98, let's say, time frame, and 99 time frame, there was 10 things that didn't.
Oh yeah, well there was definitely crap during the Attitude Era. People, it's the rose-colored glasses thing, and I love the Attitude Era. Don't get me wrong, but there was stuff that happened there that sucked.
Right. I kind of have the opposite view of you with the Attitude Era. I'm not as big of a fan of it, but I can't deny some of the greatness of the storylines either. Like I'm not a.
But you think WrestleMania 14 is one of the best?
Oh yeah, no, I don't deny that. There's a perfect example. That was because 13 was so bad, and I was kind of thinking, okay, well, they're starting to catch up on the ratings. This WrestleMania either has to be a home run or it's going to swing the momentum back to WCW again. And it was a home run. I mean, it was a perfect event.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. Anyway, so speaking of one other thing in the book, and I'll segue a little bit, is he talks about Randy Savage in the book, and what I said in the interview is true. Randy said at the end of the interview, anytime you want me again, give me a call. And I thought, okay, well, you're Randy Savage. I'm going to shit myself if I have to call you again. But, because, I mean, Jesus Christ. That
was an early one, too. Wasn't that like your 6th or 7th interview or something?
Very early on. It was March of 2003, over 10 years ago.
Jesus.
Yeah. And I remember we had been doing predominantly TNA interviews. I had done Trinity and Larry Zbyszko and AJ Styles, and I think America's Most Wanted. And then Daniel Edler called me with Randy Savage's number, and he's like, just give him a call, see what he says. And I'm like, this is Randy Savage I'm talking about here, guys. This is not, Bob from around the corner. This is Randy Savage. And I called him up, and nicest guy in the world, and I only called him one other time, and that was to promote a CD. And then I never bothered him again because there has to be a level of respect. With that said, I'm going to say something that we've discussed on the show several times. We've talked about why Vince hates him, why he's not a
or what the whole deal is there.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Bob tells two stories about it. One was that Savage was getting increasingly pissed off with things like the Kliq going on. He felt like he was being slighted. He was being called an old man and all this stuff. And he's like, well, since when is 40 that old? But he still wanted to be part of the wrestling, and they wanted him to be an announcer, and he was never
could still go back then.
Oh, yeah. No, Savage never wasn't able to go. Even his 99...
He started slowing down a little bit towards the end in WCW. You could start to see it. But again, he walked away before he looked like a lot of the other guys did.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't doing as much bouncing around in 99, but then again, he came back before he was supposed to with his ACL injury, so he was protecting it. But he still
his stuff with DDP was great. I mean, the matches he had I can't put those matches over enough. The stuff he did with Diamond Dallas Page was fantastic.
That was as good as his stuff with Steamboat. I'll say that, and people can disagree with me if they want, but it really was.
I remember, it's actually on the NWO DVD that just came out. There was a match that I barely remembered seeing, so I was glad to get to see it again. It was kind of a last man standing match that they had. I want to say it was at Halloween Havoc. Is that correct?
They did a last man standing match, I believe it was, yes, at Halloween Havoc.
It was, or Fall Brawl. It was one of those two, yeah. That match was awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome, the Halloween Havoc one. And to show you he didn't slow down that much, he came back later that night and jumped off the ridiculously high, ugly-ass cage that they had in the horrible Hogan and Piper match that they had.
Yeah,
I mean, he jumped off the top of that thing. It's like, Jesus Christ, this guy's nuts. But anyway, so
well,
the two story that was presented is that he was getting increasingly pissed off, and he finally just walked in the room one day and said, "That's it, I'm done with wrestling," and walked out, and then appeared on WCW the next week. And then Vince is like, "Oh, that just makes you a traitor," and all this stuff, and that's why he hates him. But then again, he's done stuff with Luger, released action figures for Luger. Granted, Luger's not in the Hall of Fame, but he was more willing to do business with Luger after Luger literally left a WWF show to go straight to the next night to Nitro.
Oh, what about Sable? I mean, he brought Sable back after she sued him.
There you go. Granted, he kind of...
And so it's really weird how, Vince will forgive some people and not forgive other. Medusa, he refuses to work with Medusa, apparently, because she threw the belt in the trash, even though Bischoff told her to do it. Yeah, okay, he won't forgive Medusa for throwing the belt in the trash, but he'll work with the guy that told her to throw the belt in the trash.
Exactly. It's making an example of people, I think, as much as anything, which doesn't make sense anymore because there's no other, except for TNA, and they're not in a position to kind of be dicks like that. There's nobody out there who's going to do that kind of thing that Medusa did, but oh well. Anyway, the other part of the story was he answers the rumor. He says flat out, "I've heard a lot of people talking about a possible relationship between Randy and Stephanie." He says, "I could tell you that I never saw it happen, but I can also tell you that they sure were friendly with one another." So there you go. That kind of...
Well, you know what? I remember the first time I heard the rumor, and it started sparking in my brain. Again, I don't know if it's true. I have no idea. I can't say for sure. I wasn't there. What I can tell you is that I've seen this DVD talking about the best wrestling managers, and there's a bit on there where Stephanie talks about Miss Elizabeth, and she goes on and on about how she idolized Miss Elizabeth, and like really gushing over her, and I'm like, oh, yeah, living into that fantasy there, are we? Perhaps, I don't know, and it doesn't prove anything. It's just, once I heard that rumor, it kind of sparked that in my brain and put that idea there.
There you go. That's
yeah.
And that's been kind of the rumor for 10 years. I mean, it probably goes back as far as...
Well, apparently longer than that. Well, if the relationship happened in 94, then the rumor's probably been around the business since then.
Right, and nobody will ever know unless Stephanie tells them that that's the case.
Unless she writes a book.
Right. Speaking of Stephanie, here's my segue. She was on TMZ tonight.
Okay, the dumbest show on American television, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and it is, but sometimes it's funny. But anyway, they had her on. She wasn't on there talking, but they had like pictures of her where you could see her belly and things like that. And she is cut to ribbons. She is...
I've seen one of them.
She is tight and in shape, and it's crazy. And basically, my thing was two questions. Does she have to pass the wellness exam? And two... well,
no, she doesn't. She's not a performer.
There you go. And two is like, I don't know how you do that after having 3 kids or 2 kids or how many kids she's got.
Well, when you have all that money, you can pay for personal trainers. There's why, you see it with actresses, too. They can pop out 3 or 4 kids, and they're still as skinny as a rail.
There you go. Now, that said, I found it very interesting. You called it the stupidest show on television. Their commentary on her was not very favorable.
Well, the picture I saw, she looked horrible. I mean, yeah, she's cut to ribbons, but it was not a very flattering picture.
No. The joke was that Harvey Lemon, who's the actual owner and the host of TMZ, is a better-looking female than Stephanie McMahon is.
Ooh. A little harsh.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was kind of rough. She used to be cute, but I don't know.
She's one of those weird ones, like, sometimes she looks hot, and other times she looks like God beat her upside the head with an ugly stick. It's like, there's no consistency there for whatever reason.
Wow.
Sorry, that's just how I feel. She ain't like Mickey. Like, Mickey looks hot no matter what.
No, she's getting better looking, too. I don't know if she put on weight at one point or something, but she's wearing whatever she's got a lot better the past 6 months than she did last year.
Mm-hmm. No, but, I don't mean to insult Stephanie. You're right. I mean, she had times in her career where she was really, really cute, but she also had other times where I remember she wrestled a match. She looked like she was wearing Andre the Giant gear, and it looked awful. I'm like, honey, who designed that outfit for you? It's horrible. You look like female Big Show almost.
Wow.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be mean, but...
I go back a decade, though. I got in trouble. One of the first times I got in trouble from people was I thought that I asked if anybody else found it weirdly ironic when her face went red when Vince, her daddy, had a pole around her neck.
I actually never watched that match.
You didn't miss much.
No, that was one of those things where I was like, why the hell are they doing this? I ain't ordering that paper. I didn't see that whole pay-per-view. And it was one of those things where I'm sitting there like, wow, Vince is a really weird dude, if that's a pay-per-view match.
It was the pay-per-view match, and he choked her out with a pipe. She was in leather pants.
Again, weird.
She got choked out with a pipe, and it was kind of like, for whatever reason, because I'm a man, that became weirdly erotic, but that was just a bizarre thing to do. I mean, the McMahon family is definitely not your family next door.
It's funny. That was 2003. I remember 2003 SmackDown. That was when the McMahons were everywhere on that show. I mean, they were everywhere. And by that point, it was like, oh, God damn it. Seriously, we're going to put the entire show around them. And, they still pop up from time to time.
Yeah. No.
And I'm just sitting there going, what's the point?
Yeah, that's firmly embroiled. He was firmly embroiled with a feud with Hogan, and then Hogan became Mr. America, and then Hogan left, and then Vince was wrestling the one-legged kid, and it was kind of like, what the hell is going on here? But
yeah,
there you go.
I remember when they had Mr. America, again, more weird, creepy stuff. They had him, hit on Stephanie and shit. Like, he was giving her flowers and shit. I'm like, what the hell is this? I don't need to see Hogan and Stephanie in some kind of weird stuff here. It's like, that's not what I need to see. I already watched Hogan make out with Tori Wilson. That was enough.
He probably heard good things about her from Randy.
So what?
Mr. America probably heard good things about her from Randy.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
probably.
Seriously, did you ever? Well, never mind. I won't go there. What the hell?
Never what?
Okay, well, did you ever have like an ex-friend's girlfriend around and thought,
Actually, no. I've never actually dated one. No.
No, I never dated one either. I thought about it, but I never did. But
no. There's too much baggage there. It's like, oh, you're my friend's lady, my friend's ex-lady. It's like, yeah, that's just,
Yeah, people write songs about stuff like that. That's no good. She's my best
people write songs about all types of weird stuff, like Friday.
But she used to be mine. Sorry, what was that again?
People write songs about all kinds of weird stuff, like Friday.
Friday?
You've never heard Rebecca Black's Friday?
No, I've never heard it.
It became like a huge thing. It was everywhere for like 2 weeks.
One of those, huh?
It was one of those internet hits that was really hot for like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Mercifully, I my nose to the grindstone. I find myself listening to oldies channels in this car these days. So, yeah, I don't know why, but for some reason I'm on like 60s kick at the moment. But yeah, there you go. Anywho, so anyway, we're going to get back to our usual format, such as it is, starting probably...
one quick question about the book I have to ask you. Because you talk about all the detail that Bob Holly goes into. How long is the book?
It's not as long as you'd think. I think it's probably about like 250 pages or so. But he manages to do it in a concise way, where it's not like, move for move.
Not like Brett's book.
Yeah.
And Brett's book is great, but still.
Yeah, Brett's very, very particular and concise, and it's and not concise, actually, very elaborate. Whereas Holly's book kind of says, they were screwing around Sid Vicious, they took him out of the match so Shawn could wrestle his buddy again at SummerSlam 95. And okay, here's my bomb, here's my evidence to support my bomb, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he does. And it works.
Interesting.
But yeah, no, it's a really good read, and it's not just that he talks about. He talks about Eddie as well, and again, you got to buy the book. But when he talks about Eddie, he says what nobody told him is that Eddie asked for time off right before he passed. He kept asking for time off because he said that he knew his body, and his body was too stressed out, and it needed time off, and they wouldn't give it to him.
Any particular reason why?
Why what? They wouldn't give it to him?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess they felt he was intricate to the plot, but still, apparently he kept begging him for time off, and they wouldn't give it to him, and there you go.
Wow.
I mean, he talks about Owen. He says he heard Owen that day say he wasn't comfortable doing the rigging.
Well, I've heard Owen was afraid of heights anyway, so it's like, what's he even doing up there to begin with?
Yeah, and he says in it, he says in it, somebody asked him right in front of him, and he said, if you're not comfortable doing it, why are you doing it? And he says, because if you know how it works around here, if you tell them you don't want to do something, you get fired. And I thought to myself as I read that, you know what? If Owen would have gotten fired, WCW would have hired him. They probably wouldn't have done anything with him, but he would have gotten a hell of a paycheck. And then once his contract with WCW ran out, he could have been he wanted to be a school teacher. He wanted to be a gym teacher. And once his contract with WCW ran out, he could do that for life and not have to worry about money. So, I mean, realistically, he should have just refused to do it.
Oh, yeah. And it's a shame that people feel that way, and Bob Holly kind of talked about this as well, but it's a shame that people feel like they can't, they can't, like, stick up for themselves a little bit. It's like, look, I don't feel comfortable doing this, or look, I don't think this is a good thing to do. And basically, we talk about the Kliq. Isn't that how they basically carved their niche by telling Vince what they wanted to do and didn't want to do?
Well, it's there's intricacies there as well. That was a funny thing. He says, and Shawn Michaels stayed on top because Shawn Michaels was selling some merchandise. And I'm sure there was other things going on behind the scenes with Vince as well. Another rumor that I think there could be validity to. But,
well, the funny thing is, I saw a shoot with Kevin Nash recently, and Nash was talking about, like, name me one other guy in the wrestling business that could look Vince McMahon right in the eye and say, fuck you, and then still have a job. Just every day, he could walk in and say, Vince, fuck you, and just walk in as if nothing happened.
I can't tell you. I mean, apparently there was handlers involved, and he talks about walking in on Shawn screwing Sonny.
Oh, we all knew that was going on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she admits it now anyway, but apparently that's what they would do when Candido was having a match, because they'd head for the showers.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you hook up with the wrong lady.
Yeah, dude. I mean, Chris Candido had talent, too. It was just...
Very talented guy.
Yeah.
I'd never say he was a world title-worthy guy, but he was certainly a good hand.
No. He was a good, solid, strong worker who could have worked the mid-card for a long time. I mean, I don't know if he ever would have been world title material, but who knows? With the right push. I mean, the only thing that worked against him was his height, really.
Although, I mean, you look at the standards today, if guys like Sheamus can be world champion, guys like Jack Swagger can be world champion,
Yeah, I think the bar has been lowered. Yeah, he rips on Cena a lot in the match in the book as well. He says if you want proof that Shawn Michaels is the best in-ring performer of all time, watch the match he had on Raw with Cena in 2007. It's an hour long, and the entire match is Michaels carrying it.
I mean, I've seen that match, and I barely remember it.
It was a solid match. If I'm not mistaken, Michaels won it.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. He rips on Cena pretty good. He says, Cena can't work, he can't sell punches, but he's not a bad guy. So,
yeah, that sounds about right.
Exactly. He's not a bad guy, but he can't work, he can't wrestle, and he can barely talk. So I don't know. I think he's above average on the microphone, but everybody else disagrees with me.
Well, the problem with Cena on the microphone is not his delivery; it's what's written for him.
Yeah.
Like, there are times on the microphone where he says stuff, and I'm just like, who wrote that? That was awful.
Mm. And when he uses the same one a couple of times, it's like, eh.
So, is there anybody else we're going to blast on this show tonight?
Oh, no. I mean, the book is brutal. He rips on people, but not unfairly. Like I said, and I'm going to go back to Shawn Michaels again. Yeah, he calls Shawn Michaels the biggest asshole that he had the misfortune to work with, but then says, that was then. Then Shawn Michaels now is a nice guy who will give you the shirt off his back. He's genuine and honest. He said, and he'll probably even tell you that he was an asshole back then. So, it's fair. It's firm but fair, and I think that's what people have to go into this book expecting. And I tell you the truth, I didn't know what to expect from the book or the interview, and afterwards, I like the guy. I could sit and have a beer with this guy, and as long as I don't piss him off. Yeah, as long as I don't piss him off. I think I'll
tell you what, going back into the Matt Capatelli thing and Matt, him roughing up Matt Capatelli and all that stuff, that's one of the reasons that I never got into wrestling, besides the fact that I'm not athletically gifted at all. I don't like travel. I don't, I can't go into the ring and get roughed up every night. That's not in my skill set. That's not in my constitution. I can't do it. I just can't. I don't like getting roughed up every night. That's just not something that I would enjoy doing. So, again, looking at the whole situation and what Bob was trying to do, I don't think he was out of line. And I was really shocked that it was as controversial as it was, because I just thought isn't that just what happens in wrestling? Isn't that just a normal thing?
That's not how people perceived it, though. It seemed like when I was the one who came out and said things like, it's pro wrestling. It's a contact sport. It's not ballet. It's rough. It's a rough sport. You're supposed to be able to take this kind of punishment. The name of the show is Tough Enough, and the guy's on there crying. What does that tell you about him? When I said all this stuff, and I said it 10 years ago, people were saying, oh, you're a dickhead, he's just a bully, and ironically, they were bullying me to share their opinion, yet calling him a bully. It's kind of ironic.
Mm-hmm.
If you really think
you also got to take into account there's a certain level, us as fans and just as viewers, there's a lot of stuff that goes on inside that ring that we don't know about, or how, things are supposed to go and stuff like that.
Right. Oh, boy. Well, a couple quick things before we call it a day here. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to gush about the book too much, but yeah, it is definitely worth your time. It's more detailed than a shoot interview with him would be. So if you think, oh, well, I saw his shoot interview, or oh, I listened to this interview, so I don't need to go buy the book, there's more detail in this book than could be put to audio or video. You really have to watch it to truthfully understand it. It's worth having. Other thing is, I'm dedicating this episode, even though it's a milestone day, really. I'm dedicating this episode of the show to the memory of Miss Elizabeth.
Oh, man.
10 years ago today was the day that she passed away.
Wow.
So I want to dedicate the show to her. Yeah, I mean, for most of us, I'm probably fairly confident it's going to be true for you, but for most of us in our age group, she was like the first perfect woman that we had a crush on. So, she really was the first wrestling chick that took it to that next level in terms of, really connecting with an audience, and definitely is missed.
Absolutely. Of all the wrestling deaths that have happened, what'd you say?
I said put her in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. of all the wrestling deaths that have happened, that one is probably the one that broke my heart the most. Because you didn't expect it. I mean, when Hennig passed away, it's like, yeah, it's sad, but you kind of expect it given his past. Various others I could go into. Owens was obviously very tragic for obvious reasons, because that just shouldn't have happened. But when you think Miss Elizabeth, you just don't expect her to be in line with the people that died too soon in this business. So when I heard about her, it was one of those soul-crushing moments. And so yeah, absolutely. God bless Miss Elizabeth, and yeah, absolutely, she has been missed.
Yeah, Daniel Edler was the one who told me. I got online one day, and it was not long after our Randy Savage interview. It was probably just about a month and a half after it. And the second I signed online, and the only other time this happened was with the Benoit thing, and it was Ben Benya who messaged me that day and said, "I'm in shock." And I said, "Oh boy, what the hell happened?" And then I found out. I immediately went to our website and saw the news headline that I think it was somebody posted. I don't remember who. Might have been Hoover. Who the hell knows? I don't think it was Hoover. No, he was long since gone. Regardless, going back to the point, he had said, "Did you hear about Miss Elizabeth?" And my first thought was, maybe she heard our Savage interview and thought about doing an interview with us. And I said, "No, what's going on?" And she's like, "She died." And I just remember thinking, no, that's the one thing I wouldn't have expected him to say. And it was, you're right. I mean, I don't cry often, and I didn't cry that day, but I could admit that I welled up a little bit. I didn't sit there sobbing, but it's kind of like, that's like a piece of your childhood just went right there.
All right, and I remember when I first found out, I saw the headline on one of the news lines, and the news line was phrased, Elizabeth Hewlett, or however you pronounce her maiden name, I don't remember what it was. Elizabeth Hewlett passes away today at so-and-so age, however old she was. And my first reaction
43.
was, who the hell is Elizabeth Hewlett? I was like, I didn't even make the connection that it was Miss Elizabeth. Because it was that shocking. I was like, I couldn't accept that it would have been her.
Right, yeah, I know. And, I mean, I had already written a couple things for what was her official website. Prior to that, I had already written things with it, and they, truthfully, the owner of the site, who had worked loosely with her, said, you wrote something nice for her in the past when she was still living. Would you write a nice little, nod to her now? And I said, there would be absolutely no problem with me doing that. And I did, and I think it's still online somewhere. I know that I saw that they're still doing the page on Facebook. I don't know if they still have the domain going, but I wrote a pretty intricate piece about her, and you know what? It was my honor to do so. My only regret, I had a list of 10 people when we started doing this show that I wanted to interview, and she was one of them. She was one of them. Obviously, that will never happen. And I think the only other one that I've not had on the show yet is Piper. That was on that list.
the Golden Goose, or the Holy Grail.
Yeah, the one I can't get. It's very bizarre. I just can't get it. But what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Anyway, it was my pleasure doing this show with you, Pat. You did a great job with the interview.
Thank you.
Looking forward to having Nick back next week, and hope everybody enjoyed the show. R.I.P. Elizabeth. Thanks to Hardcore Holly for joining us for as long as he did. We told him it was going to be 15 minutes. We went over an hour, so it happened.
Seriously? It was that long?
Yeah, it was just over an hour.
Wow.
And we hope everybody enjoys it, and check it out. Check out ECW Press. Look it up on Amazon. It's worth the price. It's only like $10. Buy the book, read it, and find out what I'm raving about, because it's the first book in a long time that I've honestly been jazzed about. And I don't read books that often, but I was jazzed about this one. It was well written, very good, nicely done, very nicely done.
Okay, I'll have to check that sucker out then.
Yep, I'll nag you until you do. And okay, well, thanks again, Pat, and we'll see you here next week on Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Later, everybody.